You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove and in part by JFQ Lending. All your home purchase and refinance needs should be handled by a Buckeye. You'll never pay for your appraisal with these guys. Licensed in 33 states and more on the way. Check them out at jfqlending.com. For the latest news, notes, analysis, and discussion, check us out on BuckeyeGrove.com and follow us on Twitter at UnscriptedOhio1. Now, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Ma! The meatloaf!
Hey everybody, is this thing on? I hope you can hear me this time. I'm kind of laughing at myself because I did something a little bit foolish, a little bit stupid, and I'm going to make myself look like an idiot here, but that's okay. I am an idiot, so I don't mind owning it. I actually started the podcast. This is take two because I got like a good 5 minutes into recording this thing, not realizing I forgot to take myself off mute when I started recording. So a little bit of a blonde moment. But nonetheless, I have recovered. I've survived. We are back here on the Unscripted Ohio podcast. Good to be with you. We are brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com, as well as our sponsor, JFQ Lending. And of course, with support from GoBus. They have over 40 stops across Ohio with popular destinations like the Hocking Hills, Mohican State Park, and Ohio's big cities. That's ridegobus.com or call them 1-888-95-GO-BUS. You know, speaking of Mohican State Park, that kind of reminds me, I remember taking a trip there, several trips with my family as a teenager, as a kid. I remember this one particular weekend we went to Mohican. This is a really interesting live read, right? You know, it's not often I can draw from this personal experience as well, but we went there a weekend and it was a disaster. The Saturday night, I think we were getting like, we were getting a bunch of raccoons getting into our food, or that was on Friday night. And then Saturday night, I was getting aggravated and I heard some racket and, you know, I was hell bent on going outside to chase away the raccoons. Well, I opened up my tent really fast and, you know, huffing and puffing and about ready to go chase them off. And there's this giant skunk right in front of me. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry there, Mr. Skunk. So I closed the tent back up very, very slowly, very quietly. Fortunately, I did not get sprayed. But needless to say, I did not worry about the raccoons that evening. Then on Sunday afternoon before we left, we had a tornado warning. Apparently, it started pouring. We were trying to cook out some brats on the grill, and I was not about to lose my brats. I don't care if it was a tornado warning, it was pouring down rain, it was hailing, but I went out there and held a jacket over the grill to make sure that the brats did not get ruined. I got poured on. I was drenched. I got sick from it, but hey, I saved the brats, so it was a happy ending. Anyway, that was my my famous trip to Mohican State Park. You know, most of them were actually pretty fun. You know, it was fun, you know, rowing down the river and camping out. But that was not a great weekend for me. So hey, couple things I want to talk about in an abbreviated edition of the podcast here today. First and foremost, we have some more Jackets talk. Columbus unfortunately lost Game 4 at home to Boston. It did set a all-time franchise record, attendance record. Most people in the building there one time, I think it was 19,344, if I remember correctly, but it was a franchise record. So kudos to Columbus. The series goes back to Boston Saturday night. You can go to the Nationwide Arena Saturday night and join the watch party for just $5. I think it's $5 to park, $5 to get in per person. You can watch the game on the big screen there in the arena. With Columbus losing last night, I don't think it's going to be as well attended as it may have been if this was a potential closeout game with Columbus up 3-1, but I do think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think this is going to be great. I still think you're going to see 5, maybe 10,000 people show up. It should be a good time. Again, $5 to park, $5 per person, Nationwide Arena. The game is a 7:15 start Saturday evening on NBC Sports. But we'll talk about the Jackets again here in a few minutes. One topic I really want to discuss, you know, this really grinds my gears. Remember that old saying? it kind of irritates me because I saw this week Reggie Bush was talking about recruiting Urban Meyer. And, look, I don't really think that what Reggie Bush or Matt Leinart has to say to Urban is going to impact whether he takes the USC job. But just in general, in principle, I'm kind of bothered by this. I don't know how you guys feel. Tweet at me, KYLam8. But, look, they may or may not be under a moral obligation, ethical obligation to not be homers when they're working for Fox Sports. Maybe they're not under an obligation. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But to hide their passion for USC. And look, if they want to be homers for USC, I don't even mind. I do think that you got to set aside your personal allegiances if you're working there for Fox Sports, and I think that extends beyond the broadcast. I don't think the guy next to you should be rubbing elbows and try to recruit them to a job that's not really your position to fill. It's not even an open position. And what really bugs me is basically Reggie cushioned this by saying, if Clay Helton does not do a very good job, he's going to start recruiting Urban. And that bothers me from that standpoint. Even if you set aside the ethical or moral obligations for him to be unbiased in his position, I got to say that would irritate me as an administrator or coach of any major organization. If somebody were doing that at Ohio State, that would rub me the wrong way. As long as a guy is coaching the program and the organization, I think it's fair to expect complete loyalty and support from all of your alums and your former players. And, there are exceptions, of course. If somebody's not doing something the right way, I'm not going to expect you to support that person. But in this case, Clay Helton, look, I'm not saying he's doing a great job with USC, but you know what? That program has been broke since Pete Carroll left. And maybe there are guys that could turn around. Urban could be one of those guys. I don't know. I'm sure that there are people out there that could bring USC back to an elite program, back to blue blood status. But I don't like guys like Reggie Bush going behind my back and trying to, find my replacement while I'm still coaching. I wouldn't like that. I would not like it. If I'm a coach, I go to my administration and say, hey, look, am I your guy or not? Because if I am, then, I'm not crazy about former players going out and try to recruit for me. Let's draw a line in the sand and come out if you're the administrators and say, hey, guys, this is our coach right now. You don't have to like it, but please respect it. And I don't know. I'm making a big deal out of this. Just it's mild irritation. It doesn't matter. If Urban decides he wants to go coach USC, hey, good for him. I don't really care. Now, on that topic, I don't think he's going to wind up coaching USC. And I know a lot of people are expecting he will, but I got to be honest, it's not that he doesn't want to coach. We know Urban Meyer is a coach. He's a coach plain and simple. That's always been who he is. That's who he will be, whether he retires or not. Who knows? We'll see if the retirement sticks. It didn't stick back in 2010. I tend to think it's going to stick this time. It's not that he lost his desire or will to come back and be on the sidelines. It's just, I really think being the head football coach at this level is a big stress inducer. And I think he knows, he could go a year and feel great and not have the headaches come back and feel like he could get back on the sidelines. But remember, it was the stress of the job that brought on the headaches. And, even if he's not going through all the off-field stuff that happened and transpired last fall, there's still going to be a lot of stress of trying to bring that program back. It's not going to be an overnight process. You're going to have to, go out there. You're going to, make new acquaintances. You're going to, have to get to know the high school coaches in that scene in Southern California. And I know that's not going to be a picnic. Nobody has recruited California or Southern California very well or very consistently since Pete Carroll. And even Pete Carroll, I think that's an exception to the rule. I don't think what he did is something that you can expect to be replicated very frequently. But Urban is a coach, and he's always going to be a coach. And to some extent, there's a part of me that feels like he's a wrestler. Wrestlers retire all the time, and they always come back. How many times have we seen some of the greats retire, quote unquote, and then wind up coming back to wrestling? And I feel like coaching the fraternity is a lot like that. I mean, Bob Stoops said he was done coaching, and he's back. He was back to coaching this past year. Now that didn't last very long with the AAF, but he was back nonetheless. And I feel like that's just who coaches are. It's in their blood, and they can't stay away from it. But I don't think Urban's coming back, because while he's not going to say he's not interested, because he is, he knows the deal. You can't just get back into that job and expect to be healthy. And I also think he's concerned with how it looks. One of the reasons why, and I think I even said this back in the fall, one of the reasons why I wasn't sure if he would step aside is if they lost to Michigan. He knows how that looks. He left. Remember how much flack he took from guys like Mike Bianchi and some of the Florida fan base, because he left Florida allegedly in a train wreck and left the cupboard bare. And all that stuff was crap, by the way. It wasn't left that bad. They had a lot of talent there. There's no reasons why that program couldn't have won without him after he left. But he didn't like how that was perceived nationally and with the Florida fan base. And so I think he was very careful about not wanting to step aside from Ohio State, leaving the program in bad shape and walking away after a tumultuous season, even if it were only a couple of losses, but losing to your rival for the first time in 7 years. I think that would have hurt. I don't think that was something he wanted to do. So going out on top, 7-0 against Michigan, winning the Rose Bowl, not just going out 7-0 against Michigan, but 62-39, that made it a lot easier for him to step aside. And who knows, if they had lost, maybe he still calls it quits. But that process of being able to go out and riding off in the sunset on top, I think that made it a lot easier for him. And I think that perception is the same reason why I don't think he wants to get into the USC job right now. Maybe a year from now, if Clay Helton is fired, and then they come back to him after having 2 years out, 2 years off, away from the sideline, I think that may be an easier decision for him. But I think he's very, very concerned about how it will look to get back into the job, even if it's not, even if he meant well, even if he stepped aside for the right reasons. He's not going to want to rush to get back on the sidelines, because he has a lot of respect for the Ohio State fan base. And this, I believe it really tugs at his heart. I think this is something he is concerned about. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Pet peeve of mine. I'm not a big fan of the comments made by Reggie Bush. I don't like him basically saying, yeah, we're going to recruit Urban if things don't go well. You could look at it from the broadcaster's angle. You could look at it from just having respect for your head football coach of your program. There are a lot of ways to look at it, but I don't think it matters. I don't think what Reggie Bush or Matt Leinart have to say is going to impact whether or not Urban wants to get back into coaching. Spoiler, he does. It's just a matter of, does he feel up to it? He probably is going to feel great this year because he's not coaching. He doesn't have the stress. But that's not the point, because the point is the stress may have been brought on by the coaching itself. So, hey, hockey real quick before we wrap it up. Columbus obviously lost 4-1. It was ugly. A lot of opportunities, a lot of missed chances early in that game. That first period was frenetic. It was an unbelievable pace up and down the ice. I thought Columbus lost for a couple reasons here. Number one, they got themselves into trouble with so many penalties because they're being overly aggressive, and I thought this game was being called a little sensitive, probably because of the cheap shot by Brad Marchand. Toward the end of the game the other night, I think the supervisors of the NHL probably had the officials wanting to make sure this game was under control because they may have anticipated possible retaliation by Columbus, and that wasn't really the case. But you see that when supervisors are watching, the game gets called closer. And I thought that the physicality that had been allowed the rest of the series was not allowed on Thursday night. And Columbus was getting called for penalties that were probably penalties, but Boston was not being called for some of those same penalties, and it was just inconsistent. So I think the refs set out to call a closer game, a tighter game, I should say, and it didn't really work out the way it should have. But some of that was on Columbus. I thought they were too itchy. They had their hands on the trigger finger a little too much trying to make those big hits, and it got them into a little bit of trouble. Now, ironically, up until the very end of the game, when Boston finally put the game away, it wasn't the power play opportunities really that killed Columbus. They were killing them off pretty good and getting some good looks shorthanded on odd man rushes because of those power plays. So it's kind of interesting that it wasn't really the power play or the penalties that killed Columbus, but I think it did take them out of flow in times where they had opportunities to score. They had the one penalty, the tripping on Marchand in the first period, where it could have been 2-2 after Panarin had scored. They had a chance to tie it up on the penalty. A penalty shot, actually. Boone Jenner had a chance to tie it up with the penalty shot. If you get that, it's 2-2, and then you come back for a face-off, and who knows what happens on the power play. Boston was still Boston still had a minute and a half on the power play after that. Who knows what would have happened, but 2-2 would have been a lot better than what it was before. So, they had that opportunity and they missed it. That's what happened. So actually, I think the penalty shot, I think it was 1-0, and they had a chance to tie it at 1, and Boston made it 2-0 after that. Now, they did get the Panarin goal later on, make it 2-1, and they had a lot of opportunities. Needless to say, though, Columbus had their chances. So it goes back to a Game 5 on Saturday night. It becomes a best-of-3 series now. It's tied 2-2. I can't say there is a lot of reason for optimism after what happened in Game 4, but I wouldn't be so sure that Boston is going to win this series. I still think Columbus will bounce back. I think it's going to be tough for Boston to beat that team 2 more times in this series. It's Columbus is not going to fade into that good night. This is a different team than what we saw last year against Washington. One quick point that I want to make, so I pointed this out on Twitter. Kudos to Columbus, by the way, for getting Blue Jackets fever. So, according to NBC Sports, this is the highest-rated playoff to this point. 5 days now into the second round. It's the highest-rated playoff total, most watched, I should say, as far as ratings on cable in 25 years, dating back to 1994. I think a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty, the upsets, the thrilling games. There's been a lot of interesting hockey being played so far. But what's really interesting is coming into Game 4, the last 2 local ratings that Columbus had for the Blue Jackets. The city of Columbus, watching the Blue Jackets, were both over a 13 rating in the city of Columbus. Other than Boston, who had a 17 in game number 2. Every other game in the local market has been lower than Columbus's 2 ratings. You had St. Louis, a hockey town, quote unquote, had an 11.5. You had Denver, another hockey town. Most recent game was 7.8. Raleigh-Durham was a 7.7. And then you had Dallas 3.3, San Jose in the Bay Area 2.5, and New York watching the Islanders at 1.8. So Columbus, you're killing in the ratings right now. This is amazing support. Keep it up. Watch party at Nationwide Arena at 7 o'clock. $5 per person to get in, $5 parking. Go watch it with a bunch of Jackets fans on the big screen in the arena. I'm sure it'll be a thrilling atmosphere. Hopefully Columbus will go up 3-2 and then have a chance to clinch the series on home ice on Monday night. That would be amazing. We'll see what happens. But anyway, Columbus Blue Jackets, Boston Bruins tied 2-2. CBJ fever, catch it. It's a lot of fun. The city of Columbus is rallying behind this team, and hopefully this Game 4 loss will just be a blip on the radar, and hopefully the Blue Jackets can pull the series out and go on to the Eastern Conference Finals, where it looks like they would play Carolina, who is up 3-0 on the Islanders. So, anyhow, Blue Jackets, I am catching the fever. I hope you are as well. That's going to wrap it up for today and for the weekend. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. Game of Thrones, of course, coming up, the 4th out of 6 episodes in the final season coming up Sunday night. I'm going to be attached to that, as well as the Blue Jackets. We'll keep an eye on some recruiting stuff. And, we just got to get through the rest of the spring and summer before Ohio State football ramps back up in August. So that's going to do it. Catch me on Twitter at KYLam8. Catch the show every Monday and Friday at BuckeyeGrove.com, as well as on the archives, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Catch you later.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.